As usual, another great guest, but a quick diversion. You'll notice that our full name is the Marketplace for Health, Wealth, and Freedom. Well, let's talk about your health for a moment. If you'd like to escape from the stranglehold of insurance and be able to see alternative doctors or go across state lines for care, then you definitely need to take a look at patientempowerment.mpb.health and see if that's the fix you've been looking for. Now, let's get back to the show.
Welcome to the Freedom Hub talk today. We've got a special guest, and I'm putting up the screen. If you want to get any information, it's the Marketplace for Health, Wealth, and Freedom, your-mp.com. And if you go here to the home, click on home, you'll see webinars. You'll see the people we've had in the past, who's coming up. And there's some also great resources here and information for everybody. Again, everything that helps us go towards freedom. We don't want the enslavement part. So, all right. So our guest today is Josh Yoder. Josh is an airline pilot and a freedom activist. I've actually heard Josh on a couple of podcasts. He's been really active in doing this for a while. And I think it was back in 2020, and Josh, you can correct me if I got any of this wrong. I'm kind of filling in for Charlie at the last minute, who is sick. So I am normally the co-host in the background today. Joe is the co-host in the background. Thank you, Joe, for helping to let people in and so on. So back in 2020, when the mandate started to happen, especially in the airline pilots, and they told pilots, look, if you're not vaccinated, you can't fly. Josh and some of his colleagues pushed back and founded the Freedom Flyers, freedomflyers.org, I believe, to push back against the lockdowns, against the mandates, against all of that, which now we have seen does not work. It's pretty clear, though we are still seeing this happening, which is why we've got these truck convoys going out, which is great. And I'm going to get to this in a second. In fact, Josh right now it went from the pilots to other employees in the airline industry, and then they've spread out. So freedomflyers.org is also helping to bring together everybody in the transportation industry, whether it's rail, it's shipping, trucks, maritime, as well as airlines. I've got to add, I was at a kind of a freedom, a gathering this weekend, and they handed these out, if you can see them. Well, it's kind of small right now, but let me close this and stop sharing the screen if I can. Yeah. So this support the truckers and the mandates flyers were handed out. We've already got people here. I'm in the Washington, D.C. area that are going to be manning bridges and getting ready to support these guys as they come through. But they're not going to D.C. Josh will explain a little bit about that. We don't want to see them arrested. I think that's it. So right now, as Josh said, I just want to add one thing. I was watching that short interview, and it's on the Freedom Flyer site with Allison Morrow. And he said, we're primarily here as Americans. This is about all of us standing together to solve this issue. And so, Josh, with that, take it away. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction, Jim. One thing I'd like just to clear up on the front end, the website is usfreedomflyers.org, and that'd be flyers with a Y. We'd ask everyone to go there and check it out. A lot of information on that site. You can follow us and see what we're doing. So just some background on US Freedom Flyers and how we got started. Very humble beginnings. It was actually back in August of 2021, so about just a little over 6 months ago. United Airlines, prior to a federal mandate, they came out and they told their employees, they said, listen, we're gonna have a vaccine mandate here at United Airlines. And you're going to be terminated or placed on permanent unpaid leave if you choose not to get this vaccine. Scott Kirby, the CEO over there, he's a very totalitarian individual. He's formerly at American Airlines. He was actually fired there. He had quite a long list of discretions at American Airlines and got kicked out, and ultimately got himself a CEO position over at United. And as many of you probably know, he likes to hang out with the World Economic Forum and Joe Biden. He's a globalist, a communist. And so anyway, I was sitting in a hotel room in Chicago on August 6th, and I was thinking about this, and I actually saw a post on Facebook that my buddy Ron Souther made. He's a freedom activist, and he was just talking about freedom and the importance of it. And I was sitting there in that hotel room thinking about what we were going to do when a federal mandate came down. I was expecting it. I've worked for the government for a long time prior to this, many years overseas. And there's one thing I know about the government is that they're not to be trusted, and they always have tricks up their sleeves, and they're always working against the cause of freedom and not for it. So anyway, I called my buddy Ron Souther on August 6th, and I was discussing this, and I said, listen, I think we were looking around for groups to join within the airlines, an organization to start organizing behind the scenes so that when a federal mandate came down, we would actually be prepared for it. There wasn't any. There was one small Telegram group with about 60 people in it. So what I did on August 7th, I wrote an email to Stu Peters. I work for the airline that I work for, did not have a mandate at the time. And I went to Stu Peters and I said, listen, I'd like to come on the show and I'd like to talk about two different types of management, basically applaud the leadership that we're seeing at the airline that I work for, where the CEO came out and said, we're never going to have mandates. Well, now, something I know about this CEO is that he does what he does for PR, not because he actually believes it. And he essentially did that on the heels of United announcing it. But it gave me a unique opportunity to go on Stu Peters and talk about what had happened at United and say a lot of nice things about my airline, the leadership that I was seeing over there. And so I was able to violate the media policy and not get myself fired. The purpose of that was to get people to start reaching out to me so that we could start organizing. And that's exactly what happened. In about 24 hours, I had over 2,000 phone calls, texts, and emails in my inbox. And so at that point, brought on two other people that started helping me go through emails and respond to text messages, and then we started building out U.S. Freedom Flyers. And today, we started with just a few people. It started with airline pilots, quickly went to all airline employees. We kept adding airline after airline. We've ended up with 27. Went into rail, sea shipping, trucking, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, a lot of large federal contractors. And ultimately, when the federal mandate came down, we did file a federal suit on November 22nd against the Joe Biden administration, and we're challenging the contractor clause of the federal vaccine mandate specifically. And so that's where we are today. And due to the pressure that we applied to these airlines, I'm sure that you saw the meltdowns that happened at American Airlines and Southwest, where they blamed that on clear weather in Florida. That's not what happened there. What you saw there was employees who weren't having it anymore, and ultimately they took that first November 24th. That was our cutoff date. Said you either get the vaccine, or you lose your job. What they quickly realized was that if they didn't back off of that, they weren't going to have a holiday travel season, and these airlines were going under. So the CEOs ran to DC very quickly and had a meeting with Joe Biden. They decided they could conveniently push it back to January 4th after the holidays. What that did is gave us more time to organize. So we kept building the organization, and specifically, I started working on bringing passengers on board, because it's really important that passengers stand behind employees here. There's a bill on the floor of the House right now. It's HR 4980, proposing that if you're unvaccinated, they're going to lock you down, or you can either arrive or depart a U.S. airport if you're unvaccinated. So, when passengers realize this, they have now started supporting us, and we are adding passengers by tens of thousands, and they're helping fund our lawsuits. Because what this is going to do is, if they help us set precedent here and we win this at the federal level, it's also going to shut down bills like HR 4980, and it's going to protect all of us. So that's really my push today. We've gotten all the employees pretty much that we're going to get, and we have a lot of vaccinated employees as well who believe in the cause of freedom, and they're understanding what's actually happening here, and they're happy to support us. So like I said, our numbers are growing. I'm involved now in the trucker convoy. We had those truckers early on that supported us, and it's the least that I can do now to be here to support them with the People's Convoy.
Thank you. Actually, let me show your website here for people, and maybe even if you want to walk us through it a little bit.
Josh, thank you so much for standing up and leading this charge, because as a guy who used to fly regularly, I refuse to fly while all of these shenanigans are taking place, because I just don't want anything to do with the shenanigans.
Yeah, I'm not going to get on a plane unless I have to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even the masks are, I think, troublesome problem, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
it's all a massive problem, and I think one of the things, and we'll get into this later, but what this is actually doing to the people who are taking it, especially to pilots and flight attendants who are already susceptible to blood clotting. What we're seeing at the airlines is catastrophic, and it's completely being covered up by the airlines, the FAA, and the NTSB. They're not acknowledging this issue, but I can tell you that pilots are losing their flight medicals left and right. I mean, we're seeing things like blood clots, myocarditis, pericarditis, strokes, cardiac
yeah.
arrest. I mean, Southwest had 7 heart attacks in 7 days here. About
Well, we'll come
months
back to that in a minute, because that's absolutely important. You want to show us, or I move around the website here a little bit if you want, or show people what's here?
Sure, absolutely. You see there on the top left, it's our legal fight. If you'd like to read about where that is and what we're doing, you could click on that. There's obviously the join us link, and we would ask that you do that. We'd ask that you sign up. That way you can see the email updates and things like that, ways that you can get involved. Under the resources tab, under resources, we have different things up there. We were having a lot of mental health issues, especially back in the earlier days while the mandates were still in full swing. And so we set up a lot of mental health resources. The company actually has mental health resources, but pilots and other employees weren't calling the company because they didn't trust them, nor were they calling the unions. So they came to U.S. Freedom Flyers, and it was something that we had to do. That we had a rash of suicides across the industry, which is just catastrophic. It was so sad. We had a lot of volunteers that stepped up to help us. Obviously, we have the in the news link. If you'd like to follow what we're doing in media, what we're saying, where we're at, what we're doing, a lot of good information there. And then we also have, we have partners, different groups around the country and around the world who have partnered with us. Airliners for Humanity, it's a European group, and then obviously New Yorkers Against Medical Mandates. And then we have a Canadian, Free to Fly America. Free to Fly Canada. That's the Canadian air crew who have also stood up. It's very unfortunate due to the nature of their laws up there. They don't have nearly the same recourse that we have here in the United States, and it's incredibly sad to see the suffering that they're going through, and really the real lack of ability to fight this legally in court. So those people definitely need your prayers.
Okay.
And then over at events, I'm not sure that we have anything currently scheduled. We have a store there where if you'd like to buy any gear, it's actually a third party. It's actually a third party site who came in with us, and they wanted to help, and they wanted to help us raise funds. So if you'd like to buy any of the gear, we'd certainly appreciate that. And yeah, just but I think like following us in the media, you'll certainly stay up to date as to what's going on and get the latest news. And if you can donate to our lawsuits, we would really appreciate that. Like I said, we filed a federal lawsuit on November 22nd. And right now we have 4 airlines that have said, regardless of what happens with the federal mandate, we're going to maintain a mandate at our airline. That would be United Airlines, Coletta Airlines, which is a freight carrier, Atlas Air Cargo, another freight carrier, and Omni Air International. So we're preparing as we speak to file 4 additional lawsuits against those individual companies. Those employees have actually been put on the street. They've said, they've been told no jab, no job. And so that has become a top priority. And we're putting those lawsuits together as we speak. And obviously it's very expensive. Everyone here at US Freedom Flyers, we're all volunteer. Not a single one of us takes the salary. Now, when you donate, those funds are held by Health Freedom Defense Fund. We partnered with them. So when you donate through our website, it goes to an allocated account, for these lawsuits. Myself and others, we work 100% for free. This isn't about putting money in our pockets. This is about freedom and changing the world for the individuals that are affected.
I'm curious how you found a legal team, because there must be some specialization involved. I mean,
Well, yeah, for our federal lawsuit, we were very fortunate to partner with George Wentz and the Davalier Law Group. George Wentz is an incredible powerhouse of an attorney, so he's fantastic. And now for the lawsuits that we're filing individually against the companies, we've just retained John Pierce out of Orange County, California. So some of the clients that he's worked with, Fortune 100 companies, He's a criminal litigator. He worked with Kyle Rittenhouse. He's worked with the January Sixers. He's a very well-known, outspoken voice in the Freedom Patriot movement. Very controversial as well, which is okay. I'm also very controversial. So I'm not sure how freedom and loving your country has become controversial, but apparently it has. And so I felt like he was a good fit to take on some of these cases.
And let me just add, if anybody has any, please, if you have questions for Josh, just raise your hand. There's a little icon in the bottom where it says, I think, reactions. Yeah, there it is. So Josh, let's go back to the health issues with pilots. I'd certainly seen them, and I did see that article, and I think it was Airline Pilots Magazine, where the number of deaths for pilots, like, last year in the same period was like maybe 5, and last August or whenever it was 100 and something. I mean, it was crazy, the difference. What's going on there with the blood?
Well, what
clots
we've seen
and
is, yeah, absolutely. We've seen a massive uptick, in health issues since these mandates have come into place. I know so many people who went out and got this jab. They certainly didn't want to do it. They were coerced into it. I'll just tell the story of one gentleman in particular. His name is Captain Will Wolf. He's an American Airlines pilot out of Phoenix. And, he had called me probably about a month and a half prior to him actually getting the jab. He said, listen, I don't want to do it. I absolutely don't want this thing. But, I have to provide for my family. I don't know what to do. Tried to offer him resources, religious and medical exemptions. But the coercive power of the companies and the fear tactics that they were using, and the unions as well, who are supposed to be representing us, is just unconscionable. There's zero representation. I mean, it's the lack of representation of the unions that U.S. freedom flyers even exist, just to be very clear on that. And Will Wolf ultimately ended up getting the J&J shot, last minute, to make sure he didn't lose his job on November 24th. And it was only days after that. The initial onset of his symptoms was something called a tonic-clonic seizure, which causes like massive, like very rapid stiffening of large muscle groups. That ended him up in the hospital, where he ultimately died of a brain hemorrhage as a direct result of the J&J shot. So that's just one story out of countless others. His widow, Will Wolf, is just devastated, as you can. Claudia Wolf is just devastated, as you can imagine. There's many more stories like that. I can tell you that the number of pilots I know that have lost their flight medicals due to myocarditis, pericarditis, cardiac arrest, and it's just a whole litany of cardiac issues and neurological issues that are grounding these guys. And there are also many that are flying with symptoms. They're afraid to go to the doctor because our license depends on our medical. A pilot's license without a medical is just a piece of paper. It doesn't do you any good. So these guys, they were forced to go out and get it. Not forced, they were coerced. And now that they're having these issues, they're not seeking medical care, because they know that if they did, and you get a cardiac issue on your record, one that could potentially be undetected by EKG, which is what we get when we go in for our flight physicals. EKG only checks for the electrical rhythm of the heart. What you're seeing in myocarditis and pericarditis, according to the docs that I'm working with, I'm obviously not a doctor. Things like myocarditis, pericarditis can go completely undetected by the EKG, meaning that you have pilots out there flying with cardiac issues and still maintaining a flight medical, but they're not getting treatment. And in the case of myocarditis, you're looking at, I believe it's a 50% mortality rate within like a 5-year period. So this is an issue that's going to come to a head. And then obviously you have the ones with more acute symptoms like blood clots, strokes, and cardiac arrest. But it's the airlines and the FAA, they are absolutely playing Russian roulette with your safety. They have dropped the ball on this, and they're counting on something known as pilot redundancy, 2 pilots in the flight deck, where if one goes down, there's going to be another one to take over. That's all fine and good when you're up at cruise and you have plenty of time to work with. But let's just say that we're landing, you're at 200 or 300 feet, and the onset of your symptoms is cardiac arrest or a tonic-clonic seizure, where the stick gets jammed forward. The time to recover, the likelihood of recovering that aircraft, depending on what it is that happens by the other pilot is not exactly high. So at some point this is going to come to a head. We're talking about a law of averages here, right? So it may not be tomorrow, it may not be the day after that, but at some point it's going to happen. And Lee Dundas, a human rights attorney out of Orange County, California, she was very aware of this. I worked very closely with her. and working with a lot of professionals in the medical industry. We're talking about Lieutenant Colonel Teresa Long, Army whistleblower. She's a flight surgeon. Lieutenant Colonel Chambers, an Army Special Forces flight surgeon, Peter McCullough, and others. They put together a letter putting the FAA and the airline companies on notice saying, listen, like you've forced your pilots to take this jab that has absolute known side effects listed by Pfizer, things like myocarditis, pericarditis, blood clots, stroke, cardiac arrest, all which can lead to sudden death, right? You knowingly have mandated this illegally under emergency use authorization, which has never happened in the history of the FAA, I might add. As a pilot, I can't even take a Zyrtec or NyQuil the day before and go fly the next day. It's illegal. And yet you want to tell me that I have to take an emergency use authorization drug into my body with zero long-term safety studies, and I'm safe to go fly 48 hours later? That is insanity. That has never happened. And as a matter of fact, due to the pressure that was being placed on Director Dixon at the FAA, he actually just resigned recently. You know, he cited family issues and you know, a tumultuous past 2 years and needing some time off, right, as to his resignation. Well, I can tell you that probably isn't exactly accurate. They realized that they had made a critical mistake here. They went along with the FDA when they came out and said Pfizer's approved. They did no research. They didn't mention that it's only Comirnaty that's approved, which does not exist in the United States. So they approved an emergency use authorization product with zero safety studies and said, yeah, we think it's a great idea for pilots to take it. In the case, another case, Cody Flint, he's a crop duster pilot out of Georgia. I'm sorry, out of Mississippi. Took his first Pfizer shot. 50 hours later, he took off in his aircraft to spread the first load of fertilizer out in the Mississippi Delta. That was February of 2021. Takes off. He developed tunnel vision, turns back towards the airport to go land, and both of his inner ears ruptured from increased, 3 times increased intracranial pressure. He passed out in flight about 6 miles away from the airport. Remembers nothing after that until he was being pulled out of the aircraft on the ground. Somehow he landed the aircraft and doesn't remember any of it. So he has now become a very outspoken voice for U.S. freedom flyers. He travels the country with me. We go to many events, and he's speaking out in media, and he's saying, listen, this is absolutely unconscionable. He took it willingly, but he was never given informed consent. That's another thing that's a big issue for us at U.S. freedom flyers. There is no informed consent that's happening here. And, he had no idea. In the case of Greg Pearson, he's a major airline captain. He was coerced into getting this jab, right? And within hours of getting the first Pfizer shot, he had a major cardiac event and almost died. These are just a few of the stories. These are the guys that are speaking out. There are hundreds like them.
Joe, before we get to your question, Josh, we actually haven't really talked about the People's Convoy and where you are now and what you're doing. And so why don't you kind of back into that, and then we'll open it up. You're in
Sure,
Indianapolis right now. But you can start. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Indianapolis right now. A few weeks back, about a month ago, I got a call from Lee Dundas, and she's very involved in planning the People's Convoy. And she said, "Hey, we need more people." And she's like, she told me that she'd like for me to come in on the planning of structuring this thing. So I came in with the truckers, with Marine Steel, who works with Lee Dundas. Marine Steel is highly instrumental in making this whole convoy happen. She's a mom of 7 out of Montana, and just has done incredible work. She's the one that got the U.S. truckers up into Canada, opened up those 4 locations.
Wow.
Up at the border. She organized all of that. Then she's been working with Brian Brazy, help put this together. So I spent quite a few days out in California over the past few weeks. We were planning this, putting it together with Chris Marston, Exemplar Financial. He also owns law firms, so we have lawyers involved, and it's quite a large operation behind the scenes. And so I came into the planning process of that as one of the organizers. And we started in Adelanto Stadium, California. And this was back in, this was last Wednesday, I believe, that we started there. So we're on like day 7 now. And we've come across the country. And I can tell you the support has just been incredible. The mainstream media is not covering this. They would have you believe that this is not a popular thing. They call us a fringe movement, a fringe right-wing movement. I can tell you it's exactly the opposite of that. Out in Adelanto, just to give you some ideas of the people that were out there, we had Vietnamese refugees, right, that had escaped communism. We had Chinese people. They're adamant that communism is not coming to this country. We had a gay pride group. We had a recovering Democrats group. We have some current Democrats. All these people are rallying together for freedom because they're starting to get scared. They're starting to understand this isn't a party issue. This is an American issue. It's a human rights issue. And so we've all come together, and just coming across the country, it's been incredible. The places where we thought we would have the least support, like let's say New Mexico, they tell you it's a blue state, right? Well, I can tell you I think there wasn't a single overpass in New Mexico that wasn't packed with people with flags, out there supporting us and bringing food and water and jumping into the convoy and driving along. It was just incredible showing of support. I can tell you that all from California to Indianapolis, I believe I only counted 7 overpasses the entire way that did not have someone on them with a flag. I mean, there have been tens of thousands. I can tell you that the American spirit is not dead. What the media is trying to portray in this country is a complete falsehood.
Where are you headed to from here? You said not Washington, right? But nearby. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. So we'll be leaving here tomorrow morning. We actually have a down day here in Indianapolis. So if anyone's in Indianapolis or in the area can make it tonight, you can go to thepeoplesconvoy.org. You can see where the rally point is. And we're holding a large rally tonight with speakers, with the truckers, where people can come and mingle. There'll be food. And we're gonna talk about freedom and where to go from here. So tomorrow morning we'll be leaving for Ohio. And then we'll be ending up in Hagerstown, Maryland, I believe it is, the next day. So up there north of DC. And you can follow the routing on the website. Always make sure you check the website every morning, because there are sometimes updates, sometimes things need to be changed with the route, etc. And we just want to make sure that you do have the latest updates if you'd like to see the convoy or mingle with the truckers. And we're not going into DC. We see what's happened at January 6th. The government right now, they are salivating at the fact that we may be coming into DC. And we've just said we're absolutely not doing it. We're very vocal about it, because we're not going to set up these truckers. We're not going to set up ourselves for a complete disaster. What this convoy is ultimately about is it's a large messaging campaign. It's getting people's attention, and they're people that are currently asleep. They look at it and they say, "Wow, why are they doing this? What is this?" And that allows us to get the messaging out there and hopefully shed some light on the issues in this country and what you can do as an individual to get involved.
So I just put that website up if people are interested, thepeoplesconvoy.org. And this is what Josh was referring to, where they're going and so on. Okay, let me come back. And Joe, your hand is up.
Yeah. Hey, Josh, in reference to the group of people who talk about the airline pilots who are dying this year versus last year, like I had seen that and had shared information about it, and then got feedback that was, disinformation, because it's all self-reported. So now people have just, self-reported more than what people had self-reported previously. Do you find that to be true?
No, that's completely false. I mean, I can tell you just from the deaths that I know of on a personal level, and it certainly is not all the ones that are happening, because I literally rely on self-reporting. A lot of these pilots are families. Families will call me and say, "Hey, my husband died, my brother died." So what am I seeing? Maybe 20%. I know that not everyone's reaching out to me. Now, the FAA has these numbers. They have the numbers of the pilots that are losing their medicals over this, year over year. But here's the thing: you have to file FOIA requests. They're not coming off of this information willingly. And I know that for instance, I have a lot of friends in the FAA that are FAA inspectors, and they're telling me we have a major problem. They're like, we know that we have a problem, but it's being covered up by the press. I mean, the flight surgeon the head flight surgeon at the FAA, I'm told, is adamantly against both vaccines and masking for pilots, saying that it's in fact dangerous. However, you have to understand there's political pressure coming down from the Department of Transportation. We have their Buttigieg, who knows absolutely nothing about transportation, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to keep his cushy little job, that his appointed job there by Joe Biden. And this has nothing to do with safety, has nothing to do with health, and quite frankly, politics needs to be taken out of the FAA and out of the airlines.
So do you think, like, what is something that people who are still flying, like, what can they do? Can they refuse to get on a flight if they find out that the pilot is vaccinated? Should people be requesting unvaccinated pilots? Another question that kind of runs along those lines, like, do you only want to fly with people who are unvaccinated? Like your co-pilot, are you trying to fly with somebody who hasn't been shot up?
Well, that's basically impossible to do because you're talking about between 15 and 30% of pilots across the board, depending on the airline, that are unvaccinated. Most of them got vaccinated.
So
So
this
when
is
you go to get on
really,
a
it's
commercial
actually,
flight,
it's really dangerous basically to be flying right now to some degree.
I will say that I'll allow you to draw your own conclusions on that. Um, what I will tell you is that the majority of commercial airline pilots out there are vaccinated. At my airline, we're at 27% unvaccinated. Southwest is probably closer to 30%. United Airlines, because they put all their unvaccinated people on the street, they're at 100% vaccinated. So I would probably suggest that you avoid United Airlines. Um, and these numbers, I would say probably let's call it average 20% across the industry is currently unvaccinated. And there are billionaires out there who are very adamant now. I've had several calls who are asking me to help them find unvaccinated crews. Not only do they want unvaccinated pilots, they want unvaccinated families because of shedding, and they are willing to pay big money for these people because they realize the risks, And so you have to ask yourself, when you have these very wealthy people that are making it a point to get unvaccinated pilots for their private jets, that should tell you everything that you need to know in the industry.
Now, what would you say to somebody who might be listening who thinks that, those billionaires are just conspiracy theorists and they're, they don't know what they're talking about. It's just personal preference and they have the money and they can do what they want.
You don't become a billionaire by operating your life surrounding conspiracy theory. I'll just say that. You probably do it because you probably do quite a bit of research, have a lot of knowledge, and probably a fairly intelligent network. So
Yeah.
when it comes to this issue, I would say look at who's making the requests, and what can people do to get involved? I think this is really important. I don't want to just sit here today and talk to you about the problem. That doesn't do anything. That's true freedom activism requires doing something about it, right, and making a change. So what people need to do is, we talked about HR Bill 4980. Make sure that you contact all of your representatives and tell them Richie Torres in New York and HR Bill 4980. Write that down. That needs to stop. It needs to stop immediately. Secondly, contact the airlines. And what's especially effective in contacting the airlines, they don't like to be embarrassed on social media. So go to their social media pages and just fill the social media pages with information and the fact that you don't want to fly with vaccinated pilots, that you don't feel safe flying with vaccinated pilots due to the listed side effects. Stick to the facts. Say you force your pilots to get this jab that has, side effects of myocarditis, pericarditis, blood clot, stroke, cardiac arrest, all leading to sudden death. And when you start hitting them like that embarrassment campaign alone can make them back off. We found that to be very effective. Public exposure is very effective. They don't like it. And also contact the FAA. You can just Google like the FAA safety hotline. You can send the FAA an email and demand that the FAA has never mandated it, right? They just approved it. But you can demand that they remove the approval of these drugs for aviators because it absolutely is a safety issue, and they've just ignored it. They're trying to go quiet now. They're hoping that people don't notice, and they're hoping that we're not vocal about it because they realize that they have made a massive mistake. I have actually gotten that from the highest levels of the FAA. They have admitted that they made a mistake. They know that they've made a mistake. But the question is now, what are you going to do about it? And Lee Dundas and the docs that I mentioned that signed that letter, look up the Lee Dundas FAA letter. You can just put it into DuckDuckGo. Lee Dundas spelled Leigh, FAA letter. And you can read that 10-page letter, and in there the solutions are outlined. And the solutions are this. Dr. McCullough, he's the most published cardiologist in the world, and he has outlined recommendations, which is give all these vaccinated pilots D-dimer tests to check for microclotting, to give them cardiac MRIs to check for cardiac tissue damage. Also, I believe it's D-dimer tests and fresh EKGs as well. Basically, a full cardiac workup. And he's saying, and Lee Dundas is saying that the FAA and the airlines need to get together and figure out how to fund this, and they need to do it. And they need to do this to ensure passenger safety. And that is actually something that should be in your demand letters to the FAA and the airlines. Attach Lee Dundas's letter and say, we demand that the actions outlined in this letter are taken, for vaccinated pilots to ensure our safety as the flying public. You know, if they would do that, I would feel a lot better about this. But it's the fact that they are completely ignoring the issue. They don't want to pick up the carpet and look under it because they're afraid of what they're going to find. They know what they're going to find, and they know that the liability rests on them. And I can tell you that nothing is going to change here until one of two things happens. Either there's a fatal accident, which is usually what it takes to get changed at the FAA, or there's massive public outcry. And there's so much public outcry that they're forced to take action. That's the only way this is going to change.
We'll keep on it. I think those are great suggestions. I'll put some in the head of the video that we post so people know where to go and access. Yeah, Lee Dundas is quite the powerhouse. So, yeah.
Yeah, she is. She's I don't know, I think next door to me here somewhere at this hotel. We're both here with the convoy. And yeah, she's quite a firebrand when it comes to pushing these issues. And I'm so thankful, you know, to have somebody like that with a voice that large that has taken up this issue.
Okay. All right. Dave, I see your hand is up.
Yeah. Speaking of liability, is there anything in the works to sue employers in this instance, airlines who have mandated the shots and whose pilots have been injured and are, you know, no longer able to fly? I mean, that seems like, you know, it should work that way, but I just don't know if anything along those lines is going on.
Dave, you're absolutely correct, and yes, I am working on that at the moment. What I can tell you, and this is a conversation that I've had with John Pierce and others, criminal litigators. There's a criminal component to everything that's happened here. Quite frankly, all these CEOs who went down this route, they should be placed in prison for what they've done to people. And we have, I have so many cases that are there. I mean, I have the proof. I have all of it. Well, not even all of it. I have a lot of it, right? And we do have criminal cases. We don't have anything filed. We are literally only limited by funding and the number of attorneys to take it on. Right now, our primary focus is the federal mandate, getting rid of that, and then also suing the companies, those 4 companies that I mentioned, who have put their employees on the street. That's order of business number 1, is to get those employees their jobs back and to set precedent on the federal level to where they can't do this to passengers as well. I mean, if you don't believe me, go next time you buy a ticket on American Airlines. Go look at the fine print below the ticket. There's already talk of vaccine passports. There's all kinds of fine print in there. Believe me, they're coming for you. You're next. I promise you.
And we need those pilots back in the air.
Yeah, right. And the whole point of this global agenda, is a lockdown. That's what they want. They've made that very clear, and that's why they're coming with these vaccine passports, right? So either you comply to tyrants, or you get locked down, you get shut out of society. That's what they're trying to do to us. And I'll be damned if that happens on my watch. I'm going to fight this to the bitter end. And I'm asking everyone listening to this to do the same with me.
Well, you're in the right place. I think we're all of like mind here, Josh. Linda, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, Josh, really, you are a hero. There's few people like you, they could change everything. Jim, that at least in Maryland, they gather to discuss the issues against the vaccine passport bills right now?
Yeah, thank you for your kind words, Linda. I'm a very average guy who's just had enough, And
no, I'm not average. You are not average. I tell you that. You are unique.
I can't say that I'm familiar with what you're referring to in Maryland. I would love to have some information on that, though.
Okay, Jim, do you know maybe what is going on in Maryland right now? We can say.
No, I haven't heard anything about that in particular, Linda. Sorry. Okay. Anybody else?
Josh, what else are you seeing? Like now you're dealing with the other industries besides airline. So, what are you hearing from the railroad side of things and from more of the truckers, and what else are you hearing that's outside of, the industry that you're in that,
so
talked about?
Yeah, Boeing was forced to back off. The employees over there, they stood up in mass, and it was a really cool thing to see. I mean, the CEO of Boeing was very totalitarian in his approach to this. As a matter of fact, I have family who's employed there, and they were part of that employee uprising, and they got Boeing to back off and actually accept exemptions. And I believe they filed lawsuits, and they also went the route of common law, filing affidavits. And I know that the CEO was furious. He was being served with personal affidavits. Lockheed Martin, I believe, the same. And also something else that's very effective. That write this down. There's a website. It's called bondsforthewind.com, and that's Mickey Klon. If you're not familiar with that, or if you'd ever like to have a Zoom with Mickey Klon, I would highly recommend it. Eric Mallow, he's one of our railroaders. We have, I think, 5 rail companies now, and he has been very successful working with Mickey, going after the bonds for both unions, for school boards, school superintendents. So basically, any public official is bonded, and if you can file a claim against their bond, it's not good for them. They incur personal financial liability for that bond, and so that's something that costs you $0. It takes you some time and some research, but once you get a hold of that bond, you can serve it. And we're seeing mandates being overturned all across this country using bonds. As a matter of fact, it's so effective that I believe it was NBC News came out, and they did a segment on Mickey Klon, and they called her a paper terrorist. So when they start using terms like that, you're over the target. And interestingly, we just got the bond for the Ontario airport out in California, just east of Los Angeles. So as soon as I finish this convoy, I'll be flying back out to Los Angeles. And we're going to be taking that bond. And we're going to be going and serving the airport, right? They're an international airport, so they have things like testing requirements to come in there. Obviously, all the illegal things that the TSA is doing. There's passport lines, all these different things, right? That where they're violating the law. So I'll be going in there and serving the Ontario airport their bond, and we are planning to film it and to hopefully inspire other people to do the same thing. They don't enjoy the process, I can tell you.
Well, you can't, I mean, it doesn't seem like you could actually serve the airport. So it must be certain officials. Who's a public official at the airport that you can, that we can go after?
It really depends. You have to figure out who's bonded, first of all,
Right.
who or what is bonded. And then once you find that, then you figure out the harm that specific person or organization has done, to you. That whole process, I'm not familiar enough on the process to sit here and walk you through it all. Bondsforthewind.com, though, go there. And if y'all would like to connect with Mickey Klon and actually have like a training session, I'll be happy to set that up for you. I can tell you it's a very powerful thing. And it's just something like she figured this out on her own, like probably about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and just started running with it. And now there's a very excited group of people across the country that are going down this road, and the beautiful thing is it doesn't cost you a dime.
Yeah,
I've seen people using it at school boards.
Yeah, there's a big group here in Maryland, actually on Telegram. We have the Bonds for the Wind local group, and I see them coming up in a lot of states around the country. So it's great.
Yeah.
Very effective.
There's a question here in the comments from Lee. The FAA had a hearing a few weeks ago. Is there an issue with 5G rollout and aircraft landing gear? Please advise. Thank you.
If you know
there isn't. Yeah, there is an issue with 5G. It's a huge problem. I believe it was in 2018 the FCC auctioned off the C-band to 5G, which interferes with some of the navigation equipment or the distance measuring equipment on our aircraft. Essentially meaning that I believe it specifically affects the radar altimeter, meaning that with that interference, you might be at 300 feet, but it's telling you you're at 500 feet, right? So you can see how that could end up being catastrophic. If you're in a whiteout condition, in the clouds, and you're coming into land. So yeah, it's a huge problem. The FAA has been aware of this and has actually spoken out against this for quite some time. The FCC and the telecom companies have just completely dropped the ball. They absolutely don't care about your safety. I can tell you that. All they care about is making money and pushing their agendas through. Now, around major airports, there is a radius where they're not allowed to put these 5G towers. But the issue is that's around major airports. The issue is we come into an airport like that to land, and because the weather's too low or for whatever reason, we have to divert to a smaller secondary airport that does not have that radius of protection around it. And you don't pick that up, you forget about it or something. There's a possibility that you could get, that 5G interference, you're coming into land and, potentially have bad readouts and have a catastrophic accident. I mean, it's crazy what they're doing. They have thrown safety to the wind, and it's shocking. But actually, it's not shocking. just yeah.
Part of the program.
Yeah, you and I do not matter to this globalist cabal. We don't matter a bit, and that's why things like this People's Convoy and all of us standing up these Zoom calls. That's why this is so important. It's going to be us as individuals that are going to change this country. We've got to take our world back. This isn't an American issue. This is a world issue, a human rights issue, and I'll be damned if I stand down. And I know that y'all feel the same way. I mean, we need to rise up as people. There's only about 3,000 people that actually control this entire planet. And, when the billions of us stand together and stand up, we're going to make changes. Our government works for us. Never forget that. And it's time that we take control of it. And we can do this peacefully, and we can do it lawfully. The laws are on the books for us to fight back. We just need to fight back. We need to literally use their own playbook against them. And we can do so, peacefully within the confines of the law.
Absolutely.
Local.
Yeah.
Local activism.
All comes down to those. I mean, all the laws break down to local, and that's if everybody gets involved, like local school boards, county board meetings. Like, you're so spot on. It's awesome.
And donate to freedomflyers.org.
US
Freedom
Flyers.
Flyer. Yeah, support all these groups, really. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I hate asking for money. I really do. But I can tell you that's why I don't take any for myself, because I appreciate when people support us. And the whole point here is to save humanity, not to personally become enriched over a tragedy, right?
Like those guys. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
John, I see your hand up. You're muted. John, you're
all right. Got it.
All right.
First time using the Zoom thing on the phone here. So you mentioned I live in Florida. There's a bill in Florida about vaccines. You said in the beginning.
It's
clarify that.
Sure, yeah. HR Bill 4980, that was proposed by Richie Torres, and he's up in New York. But it's being proposed as a federal bill, so it would affect all of us. But call your local representatives and tell them to oppose HR 4980 and anything having to do with vaccine passports, obviously, as well. That's the new thing. See, I believe that they're backing off of these mandates. But what their ultimate goal is to get the vaccine passport installed. This is about a social credit system, exactly like China has.
And
Okay.
Lovely.
about the chip, right?
What'd you say?
I'm sorry,
Jeff?
say again.
The microchip, like, then you can have your credit score, and everything is just all inherently right on your body. So if you go into government buildings or any other place of importance, then they get all of your information.
Nice.
Yeah, that's correct. And what you need to realize is these new smart IDs that they're rolling out, they're saying you have to have a smart ID to fly. That's one of the ways that they're pushing you into this and coercing you into it. What people aren't understanding is that chip that's in there is already pre-programmed with all types of social credit items. As a matter of fact, look up the Utah Real ID or Utah Smart ID. That it's already pre-programmed. They haven't activated it yet, but it's already been programmed to have your financial records on there, to have your health records on there, to have a social credit system on there. It's all there already. They've already made the provision. All they have to do is it's the flip of a switch and they can activate it.
Well, let me ask you something. I think we're getting close to the end. I saw smart health. Is that correct? These smart health bills, and there's like half the states have these programs going.
Mhm.
Was that from your site?
That was not from my site. No,
Oh,
I'm somewhat, I have high overview knowledge of that, but no, I'm not, I'm by no means an expert on that.
Because it kind of seemed related, like they're putting our information in and you've got to sign up and so on. Okay.
Right. Yeah, this is an onslaught from every angle. That's how they've gotten us to this point. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. And so what we're currently 100 years behind. Everyone on this Zoom call, we're 100 years behind. They've been planning this for a long time. So that's why radical activism right now is required. And when I say radical, I'm not, don't take that out of context. I'm sure that they're all, the FBI is listening to this right now. What I mean by radical activism is 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 standing up, getting involved in your community, make sure that you understand, what your legislatures are doing. Make sure you push back and be very vocal about it. Find the actions that you can take. File against those bonds. Develop a strategy. Get with your local groups. Get involved. I'm telling you, things like school boards, county commissioner's office, mayors, whatever you can do. It doesn't matter what happens on the federal level, as long as we control the local level. That is where we have to start. We start with local, then we go to state, and once we gain the states back, then we go after the federal. And that's how we're going to fundamentally change this. It can't be a top-down approach. It has to be bottom-up.
So somebody just put a question up, and actually I was thinking about that earlier. Remember Dolores Cahill? A few years back was with a group of people. Either they were going to start like Freedom Airlines or something. So an airline that people could fly without having to show any, passports, mandates, vaccines, anything else. Obviously, well, I don't think that's happened, but do you know anything about that? Is anything like that in the works as a secondary avenue?
There are a lot of people are talking about this. So right now, someone who's doing really good work is the Freedom Travel Alliance. You can go to their website. I don't have it in front of me, but you can Google them, Freedom Travel Alliance. They're incredible what they're doing. There are some small companies that are kind of working on this concept, but they're not large airlines. They're not scheduled air carriers.
Yeah.
They're like what they call like 135Ks. They do some scheduled flying. They also do charter and things like that. And I believe there's one that's being set up in Alabama where they're going to have it where you can, when you go to buy your ticket, you could upload your religious or medical exemption. But there again, it's going to be more costly than flying on an airline. The issue that we have with that, and there are people absolutely discussing this. I've been in some of the conversations. The issue that we have is if you want to get the slots at a major airport, like let's say you want Charlotte, North Carolina, for your airline to operate in and out of Charlotte and to get a slot, well, that's controlled by the federal government. So do you really think that the federal government is going to give you slots into a major airport if you're saying, we're not going to comply with the federal government? That's
Right.
the issue that we're running into. So there's a lot of work to be done before that can actually be a realistic idea.
Got it. All right. So how can people reach you if they want to?
Sure. If you want to reach me, and I'm going to give you my email address, and please understand that when you email me, you may or may not hear back from me, depending on on how pressing on what's going on at the moment. I do my very best to get back to everyone, but I can tell you I just get inundated with thousands of emails. Please don't send me articles, and I'm well aware of what's going on. I follow things very closely, but if you really need to get in touch with me, it's joshua.yoder, Y-O-D-E-R, at usfreedomflyers.org. And that's flyers with a Y. Joshua.yoder at usfreedomflyers.org.
Great. Thank you so much. It's a great presentation, Josh. Thank you. And you're coming to us from the road in your lovely house there and the motel, wherever you are. So we're going to end the recording now, and good luck with everything. Maybe we'll see you here in the Washington area on one of those convoys.
Yeah, thank you so much, and please come out and support us, and please come out and support the truckers in Maryland. I believe we're going to I'm drawing a blank right now. Go to the website, you'll see where the marshalling area is going to be. Hagerstown. Yeah, it's going to be a truck stop, I believe, in Hagerstown. So yeah, I mean, come out in mass, bring everyone that you can. The truckers absolutely love it. I'm telling you, you're going to meet some of the best people in the world. I have a newfound respect for truckers. Many people in my family actually are truckers. My cousin's with the Convoy, and it's just incredible to hear their stories, and these are red-blooded patriotic Americans who love this country, and they're standing up. And I mean, the tens of thousands of people that have come out to support us has just been, it's been shocking. I love to see it, all these Americans coming together.
So what about your wealth? If your money could actually talk to you, would you listen to it? Well, with the DNA Network Academy, your money actually can talk to you. And it's going to tell you just what it told this client. This family had over 24 debts, mortgages, car loans, the works. They were on track to take 20 years to pay it all off, and instead did it in 8.5. Plus, they did it without refinancing, making more money, or even changing their lifestyle. So find out for yourself with a free analysis that is completely confidential. No personal information, no social security numbers, no credit checks, none of that nonsense. But what is exciting is that the outcome of that report you receive is a guaranteed outcome for you. To get that report, head on over to bit.ly/debt to wealth. You will arrive at this simple form. Fill it in as simple as lender number 1 and credit card number 2. What really matters is the accuracy of your numbers. You'll be able to see that if instead of 20 years or whatever your number is, that you may actually be out of debt and on your way to wealth in as little as 6.3 years like this client.